Nobody was supposed to care about him. That's not disrespect, that's draft math. Fifth-round quarterbacks don't enter the league with headlines attached. They enter with question marks, backup labels, and a short leash. When Shedeur Sanders came off the board that late, the reaction across most of the football world wasn't outrage, celebration, or debate. It was quiet. The kind of quiet that usually predicts a career spent fighting for roster spots instead of spotlight. Because let's be honest, late picks aren't marketed as future faces of the league. They're described as developmental, depth, insurance, especially when they land on a franchise already tangled in quarterback uncertainty. Nothing about that draft moment suggested a fast track to relevance. No fireworks, no franchise savior talk, just another name filed into the system. And that's exactly why what happened next feels so disruptive. This wasn't a viral breakout built on one lucky highlight. It wasn't a media campaign pushing a new star into your timeline. It was something stranger. Opportunity showed up unannounced. Pressure followed immediately. And instead of the moment swallowing him, which is what usually happens, the moment slowed down around him. Suddenly, analysts weren't dismissing, they were recalculating. Fans weren't just scrolling past, they were pausing. League platforms weren't ignoring, they were featuring. Not loudly, not dramatically, but noticeably. The kind of noticeable that makes insiders raise eyebrows and brand teams start making quiet calls. And here, where the story turns from football into something bigger. Because this rise didn't follow the traditional order. Normally, performance creates fame. Then fame creates opportunity. But in this case, relevance started accelerating before the resume was fully built. Attention arrived early. Positioning shifted fast. And the league itself made a few subtle moves that suggested this wasn't accidental. Something changed, not just for one player, but in how value is being assigned altogether. The real question isn't how a fifth-round quarterback got attention. The real question is why the system decided to give it to him. Draft night is supposed to feel like a launch. Bright lights, loud reactions, instant narratives. For top picks, it's framed like destiny fulfilled. But for Shedeur Sanders, the moment didn't arrive with that kind of energy. When his name was finally called in the fifth round, it didn't break the broadcast. It barely bent it. No long desk debate. No dramatic franchise graphic package. Just a quick mention, then the coverage rolled forward like nothing seismic had happened. And according to traditional draft logic, nothing had. Fifth-round quarterbacks are usually categorized before they even touch a playbook. Project, system fit, low-risk flyer. The expectation isn't impact, it's patience. They're measured in practice reps, not primetime snaps. Most of them spend year one invisible to casual fans and year two fighting to stay employed. That's the normal curve. That's the safe prediction model scouts and analysts rely on. Which is why almost nobody framed this as the start of a league-shifting story. Landing with Cleveland didn't amplify the moment either. If anything, it buried it further. The quarterback room already had names, contracts, and unresolved debates attached. The storyline was new rookie arrives. It was ongoing quarterback puzzle continues. Sanders entered the building not as the answer, but as depth on the whiteboard. But here what made this different. Even then, before the snap count, before the opportunity window opened, there were quiet signals that he wasn't being treated like a typical late-round flyer behind the scenes. Practice observers noted extended install reps. Coaches reportedly gave him broader read packages than most rookies in that slot usually get. Nothing headline-worthy, just small deviations from the usual script. And in the NFL, small deviations matter. Because teams don't invest extra mental reps in players they don't believe can eventually carry weight. They just don't. Still, from the outside, none of that registered. Publicly, he was filed where late picks get filed: low expectation, low urgency, low visibility. Which made what happened when the depth chart cracked open feel even more jarring. Because the door didn't open gradually. It blew open all at once. The NFL doesn't usually send invitations. it sends emergencies. Careers don't always start with a plan. Sometimes they start with a medical update in a shortened quarterback room. That's exactly how the timeline flipped. When the starter went down late in the season, Cleveland wasn't unveiling a strategy, they were solving a problem under pressure. And pressure doesn't wait for draft status to feel comfortable. Suddenly, the fifth-round rookie wasn't a background project anymore. He was the next available answer. No slow onboarding, no protected preseason bubble, just real snaps, real defenses, real consequences. The kind of situation where most late-round quarterbacks are expected to survive, not shine. Limit mistakes. Keep the system on schedule. Hand the job back when the depth chart heals. That was the expectation ceiling. But what stood out wasn't a highlight reel explosion, it was control. The huddle tempo stayed steady. The cadence didn't rush. Progressions weren't panicked. Instead of forcing hero throws to justify the moment, he took what the defense gave and moved the structure forward. Coaches notice that faster than fans do, because coaches grade decision speed before they grade arm strength. Teammates notice something else: emotional temperature. When a new quarterback steps in and the sideline tightens, players feel it immediately. But reports and post-game reactions suggested something different. The unit didn't look like it was bracing. It looked like it was operating. That's a subtle but important difference. It signals trust forming in real time. And trust is the real currency inside a locker room. League observers did overreact, but they didn't dismiss it either. That middle response is telling. When analysts go quiet instead of loud, it usually means they're recalibrating instead of reacting. The conversation tone shifted from developmental rookie to watch this situation. Not hype, attention. That's how gravity starts to move in pro football. Not with noise, but with reliability under discomfort. Because once a quarterback proves he can keep structure intact when the plan collapses, draft position starts losing power. Opportunity doesn't care where you were picked, only whether you stabilize the moment you're given. And what followed next pushed this story out of pure football territory entirely. Because the league itself made a visibility decision that nobody expected. The real shock didn't come from a stat line, it came from a layout choice. When the league rolled out its Pro Bowl promotional features, something felt off, and people noticed within minutes. Front and center wasn't a Super Bowl MVP, not a long-established franchise legend, not one of the usual faces the NFL leans on when it wants instant credibility. Sitting in one of the most visible spots was a rookie, and not a first-round golden child, a fifth-round quarterback who wasn't even supposed to be part of the main marketing frame yet. That placement was louder than any touchdown pass. League graphics are not random. Order matters. Positioning matters. Featured faces are chosen through layers of internal discussion, marketing data, and audience behavior tracking. When a player appears at the front of that visual hierarchy, it's a statement, even if no one says it out loud. And this one landed like a signal flare. Fans were confused. Commentators hesitated. Debate shows circled it without fully committing, because it created an uncomfortable question. Why elevate him this early? Rumors started floating across fan circles and sports media spaces. Some suggested it was engagement data. Others claimed internal metrics showed he was pulling unusual audience interaction for a rookie. A few reports claimed league marketers had been watching his cross-platform traction for weeks. None of that was officially confirmed, but the pattern triggered discussion everywhere. And discussion is exactly what the league measures. Here, what changed under the surface. Traditionally, visibility followed achievement. You dominated first, then you were featured. But this moment hinted at a flipped order. Now, relevance could lead and achievement could follow. That's a different model entirely. One driven by attention economics, not legacy sequencing. He wasn't being labeled the best. He was being labeled the most watched. That distinction matters more than people think. Because once a league decides a player holds audience gravity, placement becomes strategic, not ceremonial. It's not about rewarding the past, it's about betting on the pull. And just when people were still arguing about that decision, something even more calculated happened, not from the league, but from his own account, with a single image and zero explanation. The escalation didn't come from an interview. It didn't come from a press conference. It came from a profile photo. Right after the Pro Bowl feature placement started circulating, Shedeur made a quiet move that shifted the tone of the entire discussion. No caption, no announcement, no explanation thread. Just a new profile image, and it wasn't an action shot, not a throw, not a sideline celebration, not a uniform moment. It was a broadcast stage image, trophy in hand, clean frame, national camera lighting, composed posture. And that choice did more than any highlight clip could. Because athletes usually signal value through performance visuals. Game shots, training shots, grind shots. This was different. This was positioning. The image tied him to prestige, culture, and arrival, not effort, not hustle, arrival. That's a branding level distinction, and whether intentional or instinctive, it landed with force. Online chatter spiked almost instantly. Not outrage, curiosity. Marketing accounts started reposting. Sports pages zoomed in. Fan edits spread. People started reading meaning into the symbolism. Some said it hinted at incoming brand deals. Others said it was a message to critics. A few insiders claimed it was market awareness beyond his years. None of that was confirmed, but the speculation itself multiplied the reach. That's the power of silence used correctly. In a space where most players overexplain every moment, restraint reads like confidence. He didn't say, "Look at this." He let people interpret it. And when audiences interpret instead of being told, engagement runs deeper. They don't just see, they analyze. Brands notice that behavior pattern fast. Because what marketers want isn't noise, it's magnetic framing. Someone who can post once and trigger 1,000 conversations. Someone who doesn't need 10 uploads to hold attention. Someone whose presence suggests value without announcing it. And the timing made it even sharper. Interest was already peaking from the Pro Bowl placement. Search traffic was climbing. His name was circulating. Then, instead of feeding the moment, he compressed it into a single visual anchor. No follow-up post, no explanation, just space. And when someone at the center of attention chooses silence instead of saturation, people lean in harder. But what most viewers didn't see was that, while his public output stayed minimal, a parallel engine was running at full speed behind the scenes, and it was far more organized than anyone realized. While it looked effortless on the surface, what was happening behind the curtain was anything but random. Because while Shedeur kept his personal output tight and controlled, the broader story around him was still expanding, just not from his own account. It was being built through a quieter channel, family-run media, selective access, and controlled visibility. And according to multiple online observers and creator breakdowns, that structure may be one of the biggest hidden advantages in his rise. During Pro Bowl week and the days surrounding it, short behind-the-scenes clips began circulating, travel moments, hallway interactions, pre-event energy, casual conversations. Not overproduced, not cinematic, just close enough to feel personal but never messy. Most of it came through channels associated with his inner circle, especially content reportedly captured by his brother's media presence. That distinction matters. Most athletes either overshare or disappear. This approach did neither. It created a middle layer proximity without overexposure. Fans felt included but not overwhelmed. They saw movement without seeing everything. And that balance is incredibly hard to execute unless there's trust inside the content pipeline. Viewers weren't being flooded with updates. They were being given glimpses. And glimpses create curiosity loops. Instead of answering every question, the content raised new ones. Where are they headed next? Who's in the room? What's coming after this? That kind of open narrative keeps watch time high and fatigue low. It turns moments into episodes instead of posts into noise. Media analysts online have suggested this style mirrors modern creator strategy more than traditional athlete PR. Short bursts, high authenticity, no forced messaging. If true, that signals something important, an understanding that today's attention economy rewards story arcs, not just highlights. It also builds brand confidence. Companies don't just evaluate follower counts anymore. They study ecosystem control. Can this athlete generate interest without paid campaigns? Can their circle produce clean, usable content? Can momentum continue even when the main account goes quiet? In Sanders' case, rumors suggest several brand watchers were impressed by how sustained the visibility stayed without him personally posting much at all. That's leverage. Because when attention continues without constant output, it proves the presence is bigger than the post. And just when that layered visibility was peaking, another voice entered the conversation, one that didn't add hype, but added weight. When his father finally addressed the moment publicly, the narrative didn't just grow, it deepened. Up to that point, the momentum around Sanders could still be explained away by some people as timing, media curiosity, or brand positioning. But when his father finally addressed the moment publicly, the tone of the entire conversation shifted. Because this wasn't just any cosign. It came from someone whose name already carries generational weight in football culture. Instead of celebrating the Pro Bowl moment like a surprise victory, he framed it based on public remarks and widely shared clips as alignment, as something that matched preparation, belief, and long-term vision. Not hype, not luck, not favoritism. That framing matters more than most viewers realize. He pointed out that milestones like this usually take years. That recognition at the pro level traditionally comes after seasons of proof, not months of exposure. The comparison wasn't meant to diminish the past. It was meant to underline how unusual the timing really was. And when a veteran voice says, "This is not normal," without sounding shocked, people listen differently. It added historical context to a modern rise. Suddenly, the moment wasn't just about a rookie quarterback getting unusual visibility. It became part of a bigger arc, preparation meeting opportunity earlier than expected. That kind of framing is powerful because it converts debate into narrative. Instead of arguing stats, people start discussing trajectory. And trajectory is stickier than performance. He also didn't lean into brand talk or marketing angles. The language, according to multiple reposted segments, centered more on purpose, discipline, and calling. That pulled the story out of the social media cycle and into something more grounded. Less campaign, more journey. That move did two things at once. It strengthened the emotional side of the story for supporters, and it complicated the criticism from skeptics. Because it's easier to argue with hype than with conviction. It's easier to dismiss marketing than preparation. It also helped separate legacy from dependency. The message was he succeeded because of the name. The message was he honored the work behind the name. That distinction reduced the nepotism angle and replaced it with continuity, same standards, new era. For many viewers, that reset how they interpreted the rise. But public affirmation from a legacy figure always triggers a counter-reaction. And right on cue, the pushback wave started forming, not loud, but persistent, asking whether the spotlight arrived too early and whether the system was bending. And that tension only poured more fuel on the attention curve. The moment the story crossed from football performance into cultural momentum, the pushback became inevitable. It always does. Not because the rise is fake, but because fast rises make people uncomfortable. Almost overnight, the tone of the questions changed. It wasn't just "can he play" anymore. It became, was this earned? Not just is he ready, but was this pushed? Not just analysis, suspicion. Some online voices began suggesting, without proof, That visibility came from legacy influence rather than preparation. Others questioned whether league features and brand attention were moving ahead of on-field resume. Notice the pattern. When critics can't easily attack performance, they attack process. But here, what makes that backlash interesting? It didn't reduce momentum, it amplified it. Because every skeptical segment, every debate clip, every "is this too soon?" headline repeated the same thing over and over: his name. In the attention economy, repetition beats agreement. Controversy without scandal is still oxygen. And this wasn't scandal, it was friction. There's also a detail critics tend to skip. Long before the draft, recruiting records and public reports showed he had major college offers from powerhouse programs. He wasn't an unknown prospect dragged forward by a famous surname. He was a high-value recruit who chose a non-traditional development path. That choice added risk, not privilege. That matters because it reframes the journey from boosted to self-directed, from protected lane to different lane. And when viewers learn that piece, skepticism doesn't always disappear, but it becomes less certain. Another overlooked factor: Pro Bowl systems have never been pure merit scoreboards. Fan voting, league marketing priorities, and visibility have always played roles. That's not new. What's new is who benefited this time. People only call the system broken when the outcome surprises them. And surprise is exactly what happened here. The criticism also revealed something deeper: a timeline conflict. Many fans still expect relevance to arrive slowly, years first, spotlight later. When someone compresses that timeline, it feels suspicious, even if the steps are visible. But compression isn't corruption. Sometimes it's alignment. Most importantly, the response from Sanders' side stayed controlled. No defensive press tour, no online arguments, no emotional rebuttals. Silence again, and silence under pressure reads like confidence, which turned skepticism into engagement, and engagement into leverage. Because while the debate kept looping publicly, something very different started happening privately. Inside brand rooms, partnership teams, and endorsement strategy meetings. And that's where the real acceleration began. While the public debate kept spinning: hot takes, reaction clips, argument threads, a different kind of conversation was happening where cameras don't go. Inside brand strategy rooms, endorsement teams, and agency planning calls, the tone wasn't emotional, it was analytical. And the question wasn't, is this controversial? The question was, is this investable? That's a very different lens. Because brands don't measure athletes the way talk shows do. They measure attention stability, audience crossover, engagement velocity, and narrative control. They look at whether interest spikes and dies or spikes and holds, whether visibility depends on drama or survives without it. And Sanders checked a rare box: rising attention without personal scandal. According to industry chatter and marketing side observers, not confirmed deals, but credible buzz, multiple major categories have already flagged him internally as a priority watch asset. That includes sportswear, lifestyle apparel, beverage brands, and youth market tech platforms, not signed but studied, not announced but modeled. That's how early bidding wars actually begin, quietly. First come the internal decks, then the risk projections, then the "what if we wait too long" conversations. Because in endorsement economics, timing is everything. Sign too early and you overpay for uncertainty. Sign too late and the athlete sets the terms. And what makes this case different is leverage before contracts. Most rookies need brand deals for visibility. Sanders doesn't. His visibility is already self-sustaining. Family-run content distribution, controlled public appearances, scarcity-driven posting. That creates negotiating power most first-year players don't have. Brands can't offer exposure when exposure already exists. They have to offer alignment. That shifts the balance. Another factor executives watch closely is restraint. Oversaturation kills long-term value. Many young athletes flood feeds, over-explain moments, and burn audience curiosity early. Sanders has done the opposite: limited drops, minimal captions, selective visibility. That behavior increases perceived premium. Scarcity raises price. There's also cross-category flexibility at play. He doesn't sit in a narrow, performance-only lane. His image translates across sport, culture, fashion, and digital presence without looking forced. That multiplies potential deal pathways. And when multiple verticals want the same figure, competition escalates fast. What looks like hype from the outside looks like upside inside brand math. And here's the tension brands feel right now: move early and look smart, or move late and pay triple. Because momentum curves don't rise gradually anymore. They bend sharply. Which means hesitation is expensive. And while companies debate timing, Sanders keeps doing the one thing that keeps his value climbing, not chasing them. He's letting them chase the moment. By the time you connect every piece, the draft slide, the injury opening, the calm under pressure, the Pro Bowl spotlight, the silent image, the family-run media machine, the brand room whispers, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. This was never just about a Pro Bowl selection. From the outside, it looked sudden. A fifth-round quarterback appearing front and center in league promotion. A rookie getting visibility usually reserved for decorated veterans. A name accelerating faster than the traditional timeline allows. That's why it felt controversial to some and confusing to others. But fast doesn't mean random. What looked like an overnight leap was actually layered preparation, meeting modern reality at exactly the right moment. Sanders didn't break the system. He understood the system that already replaced the old one. A system where attention compounds faster than resume, where narrative strength multiplies performance value, where presence can be built before accolades and then validated by them. He didn't force visibility, he structured it. He didn't chase noise, he controlled packing. He didn't overshare, he let moments breathe. That combination is rare, and it's why the reaction keeps expanding instead of fatting. Traditionalists are uncomfortable because the familiar order didn't hold. Draft position didn't dictate relevance. Years served didn't guarantee spotlight priority. Volume didn't beat restraint. The latter didn't work the way it used to. And that's the real shift. This story exposed something bigger than one player's rise. It exposed a changing economy inside professional sports, one where athletes who understand media gravity, brand timing, and narrative ownership gain leverage earlier than ever before. Not because standards disappeared, but because value signals evolved. Performance still matters, preparation still matters, but now visibility intelligence matters too. Digital instinct matters, symbol control matters, knowing when not to speak matters. Sanders represents that hybrid model, competitive credibility plus cultural fluency. And once that model proves it works, it doesn't stay unique for long. Others will copy it. Agencies will train it. Teams will scout for it. Which means what you just watched unfold isn't an exception. It's a preview. So the real question is whether this moment was deserved or accelerated. The real question is whether the league and the audience are ready for athletes who don't wait in line for relevance anymore. Because this wasn't the climax. It was the opening chapter.